Last time we saw how Savitri's mother was anguished. She definitely sensed that something is wrong, something not very auspicious, something perilous is going to happen shortly, and she insisted to know what that could be, which also means that she is fully aware of the fact that Narad knows it and he can tell it. He knows it and he can tell it. Now, that is the way in which Narad is presented to us in all our Puranic or mythological descriptions. A person, a sage who has the knowledge of all the three divisions of time, the past, the present, the future. He has Trikala Drishti. He has access to all the parts in the world and he knows what is happening where. Every detail he is aware of it. And the fact that he is coming specifically to Ashwapati's palace, it means that he is coming with some definite message, with some definite idea in connection with the marriage of Savitri with Satyavan. So she has already figured out he is coming here, although she says he has been a bright arrival. Obviously, Savitri is going to get married with her chosen partner, and it is a bright arrival for her, and she expects a bright news. But the way in which the things were going on, she sees that it is not going to be all that bright, all that bright. And therefore, she says, a terror ominous mute felt more than seen behind our seat by day, our couch by night. A terror more ominous. This is what she is already sensing in the whole affair, you see. The anguish of the unseen that waits to strike, anguish of the unseen that waits to strike, and therefore her human pleading is, please let us know what that is, what that terror is, what that ominous terror is. To know is best, however hard to bear. I mean, that is the kind of a aphoristic statement she is making. To know is best, however hard to bear. Well, we really don't know whether it is good to know. If something is going to happen tomorrow, very dangerous, very perilous, and if we are made aware of it in advance, I don't know whether it is good for us. I don't know. But certainly it is good for them who are prepared, who have developed certain capacities to withstand all the whims and fancies of time, the workings of fate. They know that they can perhaps apply themselves and meet that dangerous hour. And therefore, from that point of view, Savitri's mother sees that she has a capacity to bear the impact of the future, even if it is going to be ominous. That is what she is revealing here. Perhaps it might be a misplaced confidence in herself that to know is best. It may be. But it is kind of natural for a mother to say that. And she is asserting that, let me know what the danger is tomorrow. I am keen to know about that. She is therefore insisting on that thing. And in response to that, then cried the sage, piercing the mother's heart. He has to shoot the arrow, he has to throw the spear into the breast of this lady. He has to do that. Then cried the sage, but at the same time, piercing the mother's heart. It is a very cruel kind of a thing to let a mother know that there is something going to be wrong with your daughter tomorrow, and the mother may not be able to withstand the impact of it. But at the same time, it is the word of the sage. That is very important. Narad as a sage. So when it comes from the sage, it also means that it brings along with it the redeeming power. It also brings along with it the redeeming power. Yes, it may be bad, but when the sage is saying, he is not telling you something in a very cruel manner, so to say. He also brings with him the necessary help for it on that occasion. Therefore, see, he says, he doesn't say, then cried Narad. He doesn't say that. He says, this sage. The poet says, then cried Narad, piercing the mother's heart. You see, that wouldn't do. Although poetically it may be acceptable, it has to be the sage. You see, the emphasis on that, forcing to steal the will of Savitri. Forcing to steal. Steal is used here as a verb. Steal is used here as a verb. To steal, which means that making it inflexible. Her determination firm. Nothing can shake it. Now Savitri has already chosen, has already decided, yet it is possible that because of the emotions involved, because of her mother, she might get shaken up. She might sway away from her decision. There is a little likelihood of the human element interfering into the whole process, and Narad has to see that Savitri does not change her determination. That's the whole crux. She must stick on to what she has said. She said, this is done. This is what we have seen earlier. This is done. She was telling it to her father, 106.75. Yeah. My father, I have chosen. This is done. See, very short phrases, very precise phrases, making the full impact. My father, I have chosen. Finished. There is no question of making any change now in that. And this is done. So she is already firm in her will. Yet there could be the possibility of that getting affected due to human impacts. And Narad has to make sure, he has to guarantee that she does not change her will. In other words, he wants Savitri to stick on to her decision for his own reason. His word set free. Now she says, will. Savitri's will. That is again very important. Savitri's will. See, what has happened, what led her to have that will is another matter. But she has already willed that she must be with Satyavan. Her inner soul, or whatever you want to call it, has come forward, and this will is important. See, his words set free the spring of cosmic fate. The spring of cosmic fate. His word, whatever he is going to speak now, that is going to let the machinery of fate unroll. The spring is tightened, it has to be loosened, the key is there, and now things have to roll on further. In other words, fate was waiting until now for this key to be released, and that has come from Narad. Fate, everything is fixed, but it is locked. It is locked. And that had to be loosened, that had to be taken out. And it is Narad who is, in that sense, really instrumental in letting the fate roll on its course. It has to move on and do its own work. Until then, fate is also helpless. Fate is also helpless. You see, yeah, see, that is what it means. He set free, you see, the spring of cosmic fate, and now he is again very particular, cosmic. He is very particular. It is not the individual, it is not Savitri's fate, it is not she is her, etc. It is the whole cosmos is involved in that particular action of Savitri, in that particular decision of Savitri. So, this cosmic fate and her stealing, the will, they are all interlinked. Savitri's will is in the context of cosmic fate. Savitri's will is, it is not her personal will also, it is in the context of the cosmic fate itself. Fate has to be set free. That is the important thing. Then the great gods use the pain of human hearts as a sharp axe to hew the cosmic road. Again, cosmic road. You see, that is how the road is cut. And yes, you are suffering, you are miserable, you may weep and cry and all that kind of a thing. It doesn't matter in the greatness of the vision and work of the gods. Gods have set in front of them something and they have to carry on that work irrespective of the human reaction, human misery, human suffering. If it is there, it's solid. It is a sort of necessary thing for things to move forward. And therefore, human heart, pain of human hearts, obviously, this pain of human heart here specifically applies to Savitri's mother. Savitri herself is not affected by that. Savitri's mother. But that itself becomes now instrumental to take the cosmic fate forward. They squander lavishly men's blood and tears for a moment's purpose in the fateful work. In the fateful work, for a moment's purpose. Yes, today you are suffering, it's all right, but the work has to go on. It has to go on, you see. Well, this is our whole history is full of that. Squander lavishly men's blood. You see, that is how the entire history of the world is presented to us. Well, it's all right. There are wars, there are murders, killing, etc., whatever you want to call them, you see. But they are meant to take the road forward. All these things. For a moment's purpose in their fateful work. Again, he repeats once more. You see, this is important. This cosmic nature's balance is not ours. It is not in the hands of human beings. There is somebody else who is taking care of everything. Not the mystic measure of her need and use. Not the mystic measure of her need. Her stands for nature. Her stands for nature. This cosmic nature's balance is not ours, nor the mystic measure of nature's need and nature's use. It is somebody else because who is involved? Great gods. Great gods are involved here. And it is they who will take care of everything, you see. Now, here, when he says great gods, they are still not really supramental gods. They are overmental gods. Because it is in the context of cosmic. It is in the context of cosmic. Cosmic. You see, 3 times you use the word cosmic, cosmic, cosmic. You see. Cosmic fate, cosmic road, cosmic nature. It is in the universal context. It is the overmental gods who are involved in that. See. Well, in a way, it is perfectly understandable also they had to be over mental gods. Because in the state of evolution in which we are, the supramental gods don't have the necessary instrumental capabilities here. We are not instruments yet for them to work out their things. So it is through the cosmic God they will work, if at all they have to work here. And then he continues, a single word lets loose vast agency, a casual act determines the world's fate. Well, that single word of Narad is really going to change the entire course of the evolutionary history. It is an epochal word. It is going to change, bring out a new epoch. A single word lets loose vast agencies. A casual act. Of course, Narad is not a casual act. It is a very deliberate act. It is a purposeful act. He came to steal the will of Savitri. To steal the will of Savitri. Therefore, it is not really casual, although the poet is talking in a general sense. A casual act determined the world's fate. So now he is set free destiny. Set free destiny. Again, set free destiny. It is destiny which is tied up. It is cosmic fate which is locked up. It was keyed up, but the key had to be released. The button had to be pressed, and then the spring pulls out. Same thing, the destiny was locked until now. It has been set free, you see. So, in fact, this set free and the other one, that cosmic fate, the spring of cosmic fate, they are in a way interlinked, they are together, you see. Now, there is something important also. Let us take this line itself. He set free destiny. This phrase, he set free destiny. Now, for the sake of argument, we may ask a question. Had Narad not come, would the destiny have remained locked, bound? Would things not have happened the way they are supposed to happen after Narad's arrival? In other words, it tells us the most significant thing which has happened in the cosmic play, that there is somebody somewhere who can be a good instrument of the gods to do what is required to be done in this case. Had Narad not come, it is difficult to say what would have happened. Savitri was definitely firm in her will. Ashwapati might have seen the shadow chased by the stupendous light, and then he would have definitely said, Savitri, okay, it is your choice. I had told you to find out your own choice, so I can't say no to your choice. And he would have definitely given his daughter in marriage to Satyavan. All that thing would have happened. And obviously, the day of his death after 1 year for the marriage would have arrived. Then, in the absence of this knowledge, in the absence of this firming up of Savitri's will by Narad, what would have happened to Savitri? What would have happened to Savitri?
She would have been unprepared.
Pardon?
She would have been unprepared.
Yeah, she should have been totally unprepared. She would have been totally unprepared, in spite of all that. Not only unprepared, the crucial thing is when Narad is saying, a word, a single word lets loose. A single word lets loose. It is not just telling Savitri that, look, Savitri, 1 year after the marriage, your husband could die. It is not just that. He is also putting his force in the soul of Savitri to get herself ready for that particular day. He is putting his force in her soul. In other words, the single word letting loose vast agencies means that Savitri is initiated on the path of yoga. By knowing this, Savitri undertakes the yoga to meet that eventuality. Otherwise, she had perhaps no inkling, no idea, no business to do yoga, so to say, you see. She would not have just done anything at all. She would not have been really prepared. But that particular word now makes her do the yoga which is required to meet that hour. And these are the vast agencies. These are the vast agencies which he has set free. Savitri is now ready to do the yoga. And vast agencies and cosmic destiny, free destiny, all that thing is locked into that thing, one thing. In other words, Nara's arrival is not simply bringing a chit from heaven and passing it on to Savitri. It also means that he is putting his force, he is initiating Savitri into yoga. That is the most crucial thing which has happened in the case of Nara. In Sanskrit, we would say that Narad has given to Savitri Diksha. Diksha. Yes, Savitri, you have to do yoga. Initiation. Diksha means initiation. Or in that context, you could say that Narad, although he calls here a sage, he is in fact, in that sense, Dikshita, the one who initiates, the initiator, Dikshita. Narad is the initiator, making Savitri do her yoga, in that sense. The great gods, yes, this is what the great gods have done. This is what the great gods have done. Savitri has to get ready for the eventuality by doing yoga. That is the thing which the great gods have done, you see. This cosmic nature's balance is not ours, not the mystic measure of our need and use. A single word lets loose vast agency. See, this is such a powerful line. See, in many, many directions it flows, you see. A casual act determined the world's fate. So now he set destiny, free destiny in that hour.